Hey, what's up, DS3TV? I can see you haven't subscribed to the channel. It's kind of weird. You should subscribe. I mean, we got some good content here. And also, go to the Twitch that's in the link down in the description. Link is probably right here under me. And yeah, should do all of that. And yeah, please subscribe. Get to see me have hot sauce that I don't really want to have when we get to 10,000. So subscribe. Hey, DS3TV. Let's get into the video. Alright, so yeah. We're gonna watch History Summarized, Augusta's City of Marble, by Sarcastic Productions. Always love this channel. Yeah, this is gonna be a really good video, and let's get into it. Yeah, so let's keep going. And also subscribe to the channel. Also follow my Twitch, Lotus Abbey, twitch.tv/Lotus Abbey is in the link in the description. And yeah, I should be streaming by the time that this video is out. So yeah, you're gonna see me stream, and also click that follow button if you if you feel so inclined to. And yeah, because I want to get I want to have a bit of a following on there too. And yeah, let's get into the video and play.
Of all the things Augustus did, his most widely celebrated accomplishment was having found Rome as a city of bricks and leaving it as a city of marble. After the historian Suetonius put that quote in the first emperor's mouth, nothing else.
The city, which was not built in a manner suitable to the grandeur of the empire, was so improved under his administration that, take off the subtitles for a second, that he boasted, not with reason, that he be found it of brick, but left it of marble. Makes sense. Makes sense.
His impressive and winding career emblazoned itself so thoroughly into the popular historical conscience. Not avenging his great-uncle's assassination, not winning Rome's last-ish civil war, not even conquering Egypt from the formidable Cleopatra, and it also wasn't transforming the Roman Republic into an empire or founding a royal dynasty despite their massive long-term implications. Augustus himself would like us to remember him for restoring the Republic and bringing peace to the Mediterranean, as he made a very big deal about those two, but those may well have been the groundwork for his last...
And I would say he was one of the most, he's still one of the most memorable people of Rome, just because we still use a Roman calendar, and guess what August is named after? Guess who August is named after, honestly, so.
And most tangible achievement of giving Rome its identity. Now, it's not as if the Roman people didn't have a distinct character to them already. The previous 5 centuries had shown them to be calculating, devoted, opulent, fiercely pragmatic, more fiercely militaristic, and mayhaps a tad narcissistic, but these traits were understood conceptually through old fables of great Romans demonstrating virtue in the face of peril. These ideas of Romanness, or Romanitas, had yet to take real physical form. While Rome had its temples and one especially spiffy theater, Augustus saw an opportunity to make the city itself into a monument to Roman excellence. Now, there's a word for this, and that word is propaganda, but all his life, Augustus was really...
Yeah, to be honest though, propaganda exists in all facets of life. Depending on if it's good propaganda or bad propaganda, that's up to you to decide, but it's always propaganda in everything, to be honest.
Really freaking good at it, and his building program was a natural extension of that weaselly talent. But without a doubt, the centerpiece crowning his city of marble, his greatest accomplishment, was a strikingly humble building called the Ada Pacis Augustae, the altar of Augustan peace. To see why? Let's do some history. So if we consider the city as Augustus would have, namely, a canvas for imperial propaganda, we should appreciate just how blank it was in the 1st century BC. The city was situated among 7 hills on the east bank of the Tiber River. It was protected by the pre-Republican era Servian Wall, and the legal scope of the city was defined by a boundary called the Pomerium. Supposedly, the original course Romulus had plowed when founding his city. Everything inside the Pomerium was the true Rome, while everything outside the Pomerium was just stuff that belonged to Rome. But with trinkets like Athens, Ephesus, and Alexandria, Rome's belongings were rather more impressive than itself, because Rome in the Republican era was fully lacking in the big-ticket megaworks that later came to define it. No Colosseum, no Pantheon, no palaces, no massive baths. and only very recently had Caesar spent his dictatorial winnings on a major forum and upgrades to the Circus Maximus, which even still was an open racetrack with wooden bleachers. Pompey had earlier spent his campaign spoils on a new stone theater and meeting house for the Senate, and that was the single nicest building in Rome, which is cool, but when Alexandria had temples with vending machines that gave out holy water and the most magnificent...
Okay, that's really cool. I didn't know that that's what's going on in Egypt. Wait, what? So they literally had like a vending machine for holy water. That's cool.
Library in the ancient world, it was time Rome stepped up its game. So, what to build and where? Well, first things first, libraries. Augustus built a library for Greek and Roman literature and a new temple to Apollo on the Palatine Hill, and another one in the portico of his sister Octavia just outside the Pomerium. At the same time, he built another structure further outside the Pomerium, an ornate mausoleum for him and his family that signified his commitment to Rome by his intent to die there. It's a grand tholos-shaped tomb covered with trees, and it was also a giant middle finger to his rival Marcus Antonius, who allegedly wished to be buried in Alexandria rather than Rome. Scandal. Now, one bit of land between the hills and the Tiber River had some special significance due to both geography and complex ancient legalese. See, one of the Pomerium's quirks is that armies were forbidden to cross it and enter the city. History informs us that they did, with distressingly high frequency, but the point is they weren't supposed to. So in the Republican period, the military needed an easily accessible place to train and drill, and they dedicated this handy floodplain by the river to their god of war and made it into the Field of Mars, or Campus Martius. Various generals over the centuries had built a handful of temples with the spoils of successful campaigns, but by the time of Augustus it was still pretty sparse, so it would make the perfect place to commemorate his victories. Not just because it was free real estate, but also great symbolism. Mars was the father of the twins Romulus and Remus, and by extension, the ancestor of Rome. Augustus, meanwhile, traced his ancestry up to the hero Aeneas and his mother Venus, who was notably a consort of Mars. So this pairing of Mars and Venus is echoed down the generations by the match of their descendants, Rome and Augustus. Mythologically, this is fun and cool, but the practical outcome was our favorite princeps making himself inextricable from the very concept of Rome. That meant restoring dozens of temples and finishing political buildings like the Septa Iulia, a vote-counting hall first commissioned by Caesar, so that way, even when he made a big show of restoring the institutions of the Republic, the very machinery of government was associated with the patronage of Augustus. Clever. Bastard, but clever.
Kind of crazy how he did how much Kaiser left a lot of stuff kind of half built because of his untimely death. Because a lot of the people did like him, but it was just people that were up in higher powers that did not like him. The Senate did not like him.
Another structure was more cosmic in scope, as Augustus put an Egyptian obelisk in the Campus Martius to work as a sundial meridian, casting a shadow on a marble grid to track the days of the years according to Caesar's Julian calendar. This Solarium Augusti not only celebrated the subjugation of Egypt by flaunting an obelisk, but it was dedicated 35 years after the calendar reform, conveying the message that the Julio-Augustan imperial family literally controls time. And that's not the only time he pulled this kind of nonsense. Back to the patronage thing, Augustus spent over a decade on...
And also, I just thought about it, if you don't know, Kaiser is how it's supposed to be said. It's supposed to be said Julius Caesar. That's how it would have been said in Latin. But, yeah, and also Kaiser is also how you would say an old king in German. But, yes, that's where it comes from. Latin, the Latin word Kaiser is Julius Caesar. That's how you would say it in Latin.
On a whole new forum, complete with a temple to Mars Ultor, the Avenger, in celebration of his victory against Caesar's assassins. This forum was not only another place where public business was conducted under the auspices of the princeps, but it had two statue galleries on either side, one of famous men from the Republican era, and one tracing the lineage of the Julian family back up to Aeneas, both of which culminated in our favorite boy. And then he also built a new theater to honor his dead nephew Marcellus, but he specifically made it bigger than Pompey's theater. There's a whole dynastic angle to this, but frankly I just find this one petty, which...
I find that one pandy and scandalous. Honestly, that's... That's crazy. He built it just a little bit bigger than his rival. That's funny.
Granted, is less obnoxious than proclaiming yourself the ruler of time. Luckily, he wasn't quite so pompous as to take all the credit and was happy to let his badass right-hand man Marcus Agrippa show off as well. Most famously, he made the first draft of the as-of-yet tragically domeless Pantheon, but he also built the first major public baths in the city of Rome. supplied by water from his new Aqua Virgo, one of 2 aqueducts overseen by Agrippa out of the 3 built during the reign of Augustus, the third of which was used to fill the Naumachia, an arena across the river that staged whole-ass naval battles. The Romans are among the rare few who could make something so basic as water into something so immensely hardcore. So with all
Honestly, that was probably like entertaining though. Like probably like people in the city would just like go see like the mock naval battles or whatever.
that built, we come to 13 BC, when Augustus returned from campaigns in the west and the Senate voted to build an altar of Augustan peace on the Campus Martius, finished and consecrated a few years later in 9 BC. Unlike, say, the Temple of Mars Ultord, this wasn't a temple, it's a sacrificial altar. It's raised on a podium with one staircase leading in and walls on all 4 sides, but there's no roof. Roman state religion was a public affair and many sacrifices were done outdoors. But since this was part of the Augustan program, it was another vehicle for, of course, propaganda. And even by the standards of what he did so far, the Autopakis was thick with symbolism. Much of it self-serving. The inside walls are decorated with bountiful fruit garlands and ox skulls in the traditional style, and the bottom of the outside walls have ornate floral patterns of acanthus leaves and some 50 other species of plants and animals. As with all classical sculpture work, it would have been painted, so every leaf, vine, and figure were brightly colored and gilded to really sell.
That looks beautiful though. Like I'm not gonna lie, like it's it's beautiful propaganda.
The natural beauty and the idea of a new golden age that Augustus had created for Rome. Looking upwards now toward the business portion of the frieze, we find a selection of 4 panels depicting mythological scenes. The figures are a smidge dubious to identify, as some panels are quite thoroughly trashed, but we can make some educated guesses. On the front left of the altar is the scene of baby Romulus and Remus with their wolf mom and probably Mars looking over them, while on the right side is the scene of sacrifices made by probably Rome's second king Numa Pompilius, who has strong associations with peace and piety. But people used to say he's Aeneas, so The back right panel has the goddess Roma armored up and sitting on a pile of either her own weapons or one she confiscated, unclear. And finally, there's the real splash panel of anyone from Pox to Roma again to Mother Earth to baby Venus Genetrix holding 2 children that likely symbolize the people of Rome, surrounded by the bounty of the lands on one side and the sea on the other. Exact figures notwithstanding, the combined effect is pretty clear. Front panels show, here's where we came from, and the back panels say, look at us, we did it, Golden Age ahoy! And lastly, the long ends of the altar have paired processional friezes, possibly in reference to the ones on the Parthenon, but here depicting a religious procession from around 13 BC when the altar was commissioned. One side shows politicians and the senatorial elite, while the other shows the extended imperial family as a representation of the Senate and people of Rome. Except here, the people is Augustus's people, rendered so specifically that we can actually pick out individuals like the princeps and his wife Livia, Agrippa and Julia, and even some royal kiddos. One kid is shown being visibly bored and pulling on Agrippa's toga so he can see better, which is pretty adorable, especially by the standards of, again, vigorous propaganda. The intermingled imagery of deities and royals, celebrations of a plentiful golden age, and the triumph of peace are all supporting Augustan political power and pushing this concept of the princeps as a divine patron of Rome's success. And by putting all this on the field of Mars, it creates a causal chain between Roman power, the Pax Romana, and natural prosperity, of which our boy the Time King guarantees all 3. The design of the Areopagus is so elegant and the sculpture work is absolutely exquisite, it's in no small part because of powerful iconography like this that Romans were willing to put up with monarchs again, because the results spoke for themselves and it all just seemed to fit. Perhaps the symbolism is too powerful, as the Areopagus was the focal point of the most consequential moment of classical reception in the 1900s, fascism. After fragments had been re-identified in 1903, the altar was reconstructed adjacent to the mausoleum in 1938 by Benito Mussolini. As part of his...
Well, that's because fascists love Roman... They love, like, especially Mussolini, as you can tell by, like, how Italy is right now. With fascism, Mussolini wanted to take everything back to Rome, and that's literally what the people wanted at the time too. So, it's it's just interesting because yes, fascists love ancient Rome because they love like the not really democratic nature of like all of the Kaisers. And yeah, that's kind of how I would explain it. Because yes, they didn't see they see modern art as like a travesty on the world, even though Hitler painted modern art sometimes. But yeah, that's kind of how it always was.
Propaganda campaign tying himself to Augustus on the 2000th anniversary of his birth. This helped proclaim the glory of the new Roman Empire and justified all the totalitarianism. But whatever subtlety was possessed by the divine son of the deified Julius Caesar, the Lord of Time Imperator Kaiser Augustus, that subtlety was fully lacking in Il Duce Mussolini. So the already fiercely propagandistic iconography of Augustan Rome was flipped on turbo and used by Italian and German fascists as an excuse for, atrocities. So it's rather important that historians and audiences alike be careful not to blindly glorify any civilization.
Well, this is why, you need to just look at the facts, look at, some of the good stuff that they did do. Don't forget the bad stuff that they did, because, every imperial power is bad. That's just it. And I include America and Russia in that, too. But yes, any imperial power that comes up that came up before America or after America is bad. But that's just how you should look at history, to be honest. Imperialism is bad, but look at the great marvels that they achieved while that imperial power was still going.
We should celebrate the nice and criticize the yikes, because neither exists in a vacuum. Augustus was endlessly clever. He was also a lying, weaselly rascal, and I f***ing hate him. The Areopagus is spectacular. Augustan Rome is magnificent. But what did it cost the Romans, and what would it later cost Europe? Thank you for watching. I had originally planned to focus in on the Areopagus in particular, but I think...
honestly, it's not the worst thing to say that both of those two are slightly connected, but they did have a difference in at least Rome decided, I actually like learning about Greece more because you don't know a lot about Greece too. And plus it's the foundation for democracy there too, even though it wasn't fully democratic. But when it comes to Rome, you can't say that Rome was the start, even Augustus, you can't say that it was a starter for fascism, because it really wasn't. What happened in Italy was basically centuries and centuries of losing and kind of just being told that you have to sit on the sidelines, and it kind of boiled over into after World War I, where they were, most people in Italy and in Germany were poor because they lost the First World War. Because that just didn't turn out well for them. And they usually, something that I do believe, when a country turns to its, turns to its most extreme groups, when that country is facing a lot of economic downturn and also even military downturn, if a country is invading, they're going to go to the group that is the most extreme to defend the country, because they know that group will probably defend the country. Who knows what's going to happen after that? I would talk about the Azov Battalion in Ukraine, but yes, that does happen in other places than in Ukraine. It happened leading up to World War II, and it happens in a lot of places where there are wars. We haven't had a big war in a very long time in America, so we don't really think about it. And plus, whenever we do have a war, we're usually on the winning side because we strong arm a lot of countries. So it's not like that we have to have that worry that we're going to lose, right? But say if you had that worry that you were going to lose, because we're not say if you weren't a part of a bigger nation, right? But yeah, talk to you guys in the next video, and subscribe to the channel, follow my Twitch, twitch.tv/lotus.abbey, and talk to you guys in the next video, and Peace.